Dave, you are up.
Here we go. First thing, we've attached several policies in our monthly quest to review policies. I've given you a summary sheet at your station that just highlights any specific changes to that particular policy that goes along with what you might read in its full rendition. The one I want to highlight is, a couple of them I want to highlight. One is 606.3, animals in the classroom. This is not new to us. However, we are adding 606.3 R1 regulations for this. We've entitled it Guidelines for Use of Professional Therapy Dogs. This will just clarify who can bring a dog with the standard procedures for being able to do that, since we do have several therapy dogs in our building. We were only using the previous policy to sort of administrate that, and we felt it was time to get more specific and more stringent upon what those guidelines should be. So that entire regulation is new. And Lori did point out a couple of typographical errors in that policy. So we have those listed also, and we'll get those corrected.
Could I make a comment on 606.3?
Yes, you may.
Having read this, it appears to me that I think the word documentation needs to be strategically put in that document somewhere, because right now it's sort of up in the air. It could be verbal, and they show up with an animal, and you said, no, I didn't, and all that kind of stuff. So I would have some form of documentation, verifying time, animal, place, all those kinds of things. Simple as possible, but still documentation.
Is there an Iowa code on that though, that if somebody says it's a...
Well, there is on service animals.
Right.
This is not,
Different.
this is therapy dog. This isn't
Different
bringing a pet.
service. Okay.
This is, most of our counseling offices have therapy dogs.
Okay.
So it's used for therapy, not as somebody's service animal, as in a blind person or some other need that they've verified medically.
Okay.
Thank you for that comment.
Okay.
I want to point out 203, Board of Director Policy, Conflict of Interest. The compensation amount was increased from $2,500 to $6,000.
Oh, good.
So people like Alan can substitute more,
Good.
or people with contracts with the district can do more. So that's a highlight. I also
That
want,
must have changed through the,
that's,
sorry,
Through the state.
state.
the law changed.
Excuse me,
Correct.
sorry about that.
They changed the law. They also changed the law on number 2, or same policy, conflict of interest. They eliminated the statement, so we are eliminating statements. It's not a conflict of interest for the board to hire the spouse of a board member or do business with the spouse of a board member during the term of the board member. So that is no longer going to be in our policy since that was changed.
So they're eliminating that.
They're eliminating that.
Okay.
And then a couple of other, there's significant 505.5 graduation requirements. Students who receive special education, that section about as prescribed by their IEP is now eliminated. They actually have to complete 4 years of English, 3 years of math, just like everybody else. So that's a new change in the law. We can't use their IEP to get them to graduate. And then in addition, 603.1 that will go into effect with the class of 2021 is an additional 1/2 unit of financial literacy is required for graduation by the state of Iowa. And that's this year's freshmen, correct? So we have a plan in place to add that course for them to take before they graduate. So that's the highlights of the review of the 600s on first reading.
I have a few that I'd like to discuss with the board, and some points, if I may. On 606.6, insufficient classroom space. I'd like to hear from Director Jacob Schweitzer on that. Nothing is mentioned about any kind of building code or fire code or anything like that. Would any of that apply? I think you're the expert here in that venue.
Let me.
Something to be considered maybe at the next meeting?
I can look into it.
Okay, thank you. Then I submitted some documents today for 607.2 on immunizations. What I did was I copied the Iowa Department of Public Health immunization code It's a short little paragraph laying out, so if somebody, and the URL, so that if somebody wanted to look into that further, it's available. And then on 607.2R2, it's talking about communicable conditions, and don't want to get, I like that dot I's and cross T's, I'll just admit I have OCD. They just say communicable conditions, and if I drill down into that, people conflate Enterobacter, norovirus, and salmonella infections with influenza, and they take all four of these and they group them together. If a child really does have influenza, they are communicable 3 days after symptoms subside. So here comes this kid, can cough and sneeze and touch and just spread that for 3 days like nobody's business, and now you've got an outbreak in the school, and it's just a big mess. I would like to see something a little bit more specific about that, because then you can have the kid stay at home until he's not communicable anymore. If we're going to address this situation, we might as well do it effectively. Also in that same policy, it talks about sending them to the emergency room. Well, everybody's insurance is different. Maybe that child does not need an emergency room visit. Maybe what they just need is an urgent care visit, which would carry a lot less expense and a lot more availability maybe than an emergency room visit. Just a suggestion.
Which?
That was 607.2R2.
R2.
These are things that just came to mind as I read through these, and they're just suggestions.
Thank you.
I
And
thought of that, for me, it's the difference between $50 and $500.
exactly, and for the family.
Right,
It comes out of the
right.
budget. 307, I just thought that 10 days back to back on that particular one was quite a length of time. I was wondering, standard practice in the business world is 5 business days. 5 working days would be maybe a suggestion. I'm just thinking that 20 days can be a whole month of time spent on something that could be resolved much quicker. To everybody's satisfaction, just my thoughts. And I get paid for my thoughts. Sorry.
No, you don't.
It's our appreciation.
That's
right.
Give you payment.
There's no payment.
Honorable mention.
At least it's not thoughtless.
That's right.
Talk to my wife.
Right.
That is funny.
Okay.
So, we're in a COM meeting, right?
Yes, we were
Yeah.
just talking.
So
This is
just-
our work session.
So just my first glance at that 606.1, it doesn't do, a lot of the fire code,
It was
will say-
606.6.
606.6.
Yeah.
Insufficient classroom space, okay, I got the class regrouping, but a lot of, the fire code would be about emergency lighting, exit lighting, the width of the hallways, the handrail heights,
It doesn't have
and the
to do
size
with
of the room.
Yeah, so
Yeah, because I mean, how many people you can put in a room based on
And
the square footage of the room,
funnels.
and then how the seating arrangements are, so there's a lot of pieces to that. I'll look into it though, but.
If it's not mentioned elsewhere, I think this would be a good place to put it. If it's mentioned elsewhere, make reference to it.
The NFP standard or.
Yep, yep.
International Building Codes. Maybe I'll call you about some of the other ones too that you were talking about with yeah.
Sure.
Well, I didn't know there was a difference between therapy and service, so I learned something for animals. I did not. I thought they followed in the same classification.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, on we go.
StatCom report, it's a PowerPoint presentation. I've given you an outline of it. You may feel more inclined to take a chair out there and look at the screen instead of looking at this, which is fine.
I'll act like Tom. I'll be polite and respectful. Quiet.
I'm just
What?
sitting with all my
You're not sitting by me today?
Well, I thought I'd leave you on the show.
I want to thank
Sorry.
the StackCom club or group from Iowa State, and there are 4 of the members of it that really did this work on their end. And so this was the first kind of project that involved a school that they've been involved with. So it was groundbreaking territory for them and for us. And I was pleased to work with them, and they are wanting to work with us more. So the basic purpose of this from the district's point of view is the summary of data insights, the trends in student data, the relationship between variables is what we were looking for. So we gave them all of the data that we had. And this pilot project, which is how I referred to it, we focused on elementary only. So the data that we supplied was everything that we knew from Power School, as you'd seen before, about our K through 4 students. And that's what they started with. And I think we had to send it to them about 3 times because of just formatting and how we kept it versus how they were going to be able to use it. So we learned a lot about just the storage and the collection of data based on that initial, hey, here's our stuff, thinking it was good enough, and they're saying, no, we need it this way, and we need this, and we need that. And so we learned a lot that way. Their summary tonight is initial modeling results from a program called JUMP. So that's the one that they use. They use several. They are willing and interested in helping us learn how to do JUMP. And we have a group of people that are interested in taking that on. And then, of course, future analysis is the real key to this is what do we do with this? And I think that is where the truth of the findings comes from. So the data insights, first of all, we had a significant amount of what we call FAST data for our elementary students. And that is, do you remember what it stands for, Susan?
Formative assessment, student
Testing?
tests.
It's reading. It's our version of a reading screener that we're required to give by the state. So all of our elementary kids have FAST. And that they then took the last 2 years or this is 17-18, and they tracked it, and by color, it's with Lexia. So we added the Lexia variable to say, so that all the students do Lexia, what's the impact of Lexia on FAST scores? And the first takeaway is that if we don't make a significant improvement in those who are deemed behind by the end of kindergarten, which is 0th grade up here, look what happens to the lines in first, second, and 3rd grade. It's really hard to keep somebody caught up when they fall behind.
Is this the 60-second reading? You know?
The 60-second reading.
Yeah.
So like how much can they read?
I'm not
60
sure what the
seconds?
format of FAST is. Do they read for 60 seconds?
Isn't this computer?
Yes, it's computer adaptive assessment. Now, at the kindergarten level, it is not, but at the upper grades, it is.
It's a computer-based test, but it's not adaptive at kindergarten.
Right, well, and it has more of a, it doesn't have the teacher has a larger role to play in the lower grades, and so it is not the same test that you would see at the upper grades. There are 2 different assessments at K1 and 2 and up 3, 4 is different. Both are fast, both are screeners, both are designed to screen for fluency. That's the intent.
Now, let's go back. Can you go back? Are those scales absolute so that as I move from 1st to 2nd grade, I mean,
No.
There's cut scores.
it almost.
No, every grade is different.
Okay.
They recalibrate.
Right, okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
And they actually recalibrate throughout the year,
right.
all winter scores.
It's too bad you can't make that an absolute scale. So that-
There you go. I mean, see, that's the kind of stuff when we talk to them, they're like, can't you guys do that? Or can you? So that's the give and take of trying to figure out how to really get what we would really like to know versus what do we have to work with.
And if it's an absolute scale, what I'm really looking at to a certain degree is the summer break, what happens?
Right.
You know, how far did they go? We aren't asking, if they went down, we're asking
Right.
how far.
And that's a really good question that we've asked, and they did analysis of summer school, the impact of summer school for us.
That's great.
So and that's not something we gave them up front. That's something they said, hey, what about summer school? Well, we can figure out who's in summer school. So we're much smarter about what we're gonna collect and how we're gonna collect it next year, and to get better results.
Maybe have an absolute scale. It's very gratifying
Right.
to see that first grade, look at those top performers,
Right.
how they just go exponential there.
And that's a really good takeaway.
Yeah.
That's the above group,
Right,
and they stay above.
and they really take
Using
off.
Lexia and there's other factors, but they really do take off. But look at the red line.
Yeah,
Not much growth.
it sort of flatlines. The further down you
In
go,
first grade, it sure does, and then second, third grade, look pretty good. So that's like all of our students combined.
Yeah.
Okay? We also analyzed it by teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And there was not a significant difference in the way we collected the data by teacher. They all have an appropriate range of students, and there's growth in all groups. So, but it's, again, we know teachers have a factor, and so we've started to think about it in that. How do we collect better evidence to help teachers see what variables they play in this role?
Are they all pretty much using the same method?
Yes.
Okay.
That's Lexia. This is Lexia. That's the next question though, because what other things are they using
It's red, I can't.
The variables,
that might
what are
be
the
different?
variables that we
I might have an intervention that you don't use.
Right, exactly.
Let's measure that.
Right.
And that's a really big finding at the end.
Oh, we're gonna get that, huh? All right.
So that's first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, all about the same. It's basically the same conclusion. It's inconclusive.
They're tightening up though.
They do. That's
I
what they
don't think
should.
that scatter graph doesn't give me
Yeah.
anything.
But
Am I-
if you click on
Am I
flights,
missing
it's
it? I
all-
even looked at it. I just don't get it.
No, there's nothing, it's not a finding for us.
Okay, 'cause yeah, I'm like.
Okay, summer school. So the predictability of FAST from fall to spring and other demographics. So you can't see it real well, but grade was a predictor, which we expected it to be. Days absent was not a predictor. Attendance was not a predictor. Gender was not a predictor, and ethnicity was not, excuse me. For again, this is only summer school students,
Oh.
but lunch status was, because summer school was, and then fast spring, we expected this. Higher fast spring scores associated with higher fall fast scores. So summer school had an impact. It's just being more, knowing that, being more cognizant of who do we want to help and how, being more focused on what to help them with. But it is a booster for them. That one's beyond me. So this is a summary of their statistic modeling. They used, again, this is from Iowa testing, it's called College Ready, it's a score. So they used that cut score and then looked at it by gender, and so you can see the difference in male, and female. They would not call this significant. Ethnicity. You can kind of guess. The letters like B is black, H is Hispanic, I is Indian, mixed. White. Can't remember what P and A are. Asian, Filipino. I'm not sure the P. A is Asian.
M is more something Islanders.
Maori?
Islanders.
Okay.
Yeah.
Malaysian,
Yeah.
Micronesian.
Okay.
Anyway, so that's analysis of grade 3 and 4. That's where college ready scores start. And the difference is shown in this graph. It is.
Yeah, it is pretty
And
good.
that's the thing. It is true in some grades, but not every grade. But it generally matches what you would
Assume.
assume or other statistical analysis to say about what's the impact of race or what's the impact of socioeconomic status on performance.
I'd say culture, and that's beyond our scope.
Right, that'd be a really interesting one to try to monitor. And then we did it by school. So this is by building. So you can see Harding's compared to Hoover's, compared to Jefferson's. Pinecrest we used, just again from a practice standpoint, and then Roosevelt. And no surprise, Jefferson is statistically better than the other buildings. But they're also not as diverse and not as much free and reduced lunch. I mean, they don't have the other factors like some of our other buildings do.
Roosevelt, that was pretty good.
Yeah, they had some good scores. And they are our most diverse and our most, our poorest school.
Something happens between 3rd and 4th grade.
Yeah.
That's something to monitor again. We don't want to overreact with a one-year look to say, oh, that's a real trend, but that's definitely something to monitor. Right, what's happening between 3rd and 4th grade? And what happens between buildings when they go to Lincoln?
Right.
You know, lots of things like that to consider when you group them this way.
Yeah, particularly Roosevelt.
Right,
So,
that's right.
yeah.
Tracking those students over time is really a goal of ours.
Is that score out of 100? I guess I need to know.
It's 47.4% of the 47 students from Harding were deemed college ready based on that score. So it's percent of the total students
Oh,
listed there.
different each time.
Yeah, okay.
Be helpful if we did it.
Yeah.
This was college ready and lunch status, which was significant.
Yeah.
And the key again is you don't impact poverty and say, well, we just need to have less poor people, you know, or get them off free and reduced lunch. It's the fact that you realize there's a difference and understanding the difference and coming up with interventions that deal with what you know is likely going to happen. It's not making it an excuse. It's just knowing you have to work differently.
You're probably wondering why I'm earning your mortgage.
So then they get into, and I wish they could have come tonight. Unfortunately, they're students and they were all committed, but if we can do this during the school year next year, they would love to come and actually do the presentation, and I think you'd learn a lot. So they did give us kind of a look at how JUMP works, how the code works, how do they sort of put that all into action. And again, this was how they got to that the using codes and results for those couple of things. So they're just showing an example of what they previously reported on the other pages. So then they used Lexia. Lexia was the one thing that we had that wasn't a standard score. It wasn't an Iowa assessment score. It wasn't a FAST score. It wasn't actual intervention. It's a reading program. Everybody's enrolled in Lexia. We have a category in Lexia indicating the relation to their grade level. And this is us talking. We would like to see the effect of Lexia on reading scores. Unfortunately, we cannot see this from this data. We can see how changes in Lexia status relate to changes in reading scores, which is an association but not causation. So modeling here in R, they used a different program called R. With this can be done in JUMP. Instructions are provided if desired. So that's where it gets kind of technical. And this kind of gets into the technicality of it. But in Lexia, you're tracked with being 2 grades below, 1 grade below, in your grade, or above your grade. So that's the 4 colors of Lexia. And this is a count by grade of where students are. And you can also be finished. I guess that's a status, but we don't really, it's kind of a subgroup of above grade is when you get like through all of the modules. You're done.
So if I,
Go back one, please. Thank you.
and only because I'm trying to grasp it, you know what I mean? So if I look at that, I'll put my glasses on and off. So I'm looking at kindergarten, these are all done in the same year, so we're not following a kindergarten class to
Correct.
first grade, to second grade through. That's just kindergarten, so when in first grade you have 1, you didn't have somebody from kindergarten into the next year that now fall 2 below.
A
First
bit of
grade-
a technicality because you can't have a first grader 2 below.
Right, so that's what was my question, is
Yeah.
like, that
So-
is first grade, but you're just doing the testing, and so they're basically,
Not at grade level.
right.
Yeah.
And 1 below means they're at kindergarten.
Right.
And so in student grade, is that the total of everybody in kindergarten?
That's that group of students in student grade. The total is the add them all up, which isn't done. So for kindergarten, it'd be 134 or 132
Okay,
total. And then Their first grade, so that's,
Missing the 85.
yeah, excuse me, yeah, the 85's got to get pushed over.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So what does finished mean?
they've done all the modules.
Oh, so 01, 04, 82, I'm not following it.
So there were 0 kindergartners that had finished everything you could possibly read in the kindergarten section of
Got
Lexia.
it, okay.
1 first grader got them all done.
And 82 out
82
of
fourth graders.
that, we'd have to do 41, 28, 79,
Yep.
and 65
Yep.
to get the percentage from that 80.
Yep.
If I were to interpret this, what's very gratifying to me is one below.
That's crazy.
In third grade, you're 56, in fourth grade, you're 28, you cut it in half, that's fabulous. Right there, that's a real good trend, those are real good numbers right there. And then a concern in my interpretation, right or wrong, would be, look at 2+ below. It's like,
Yep.
those are the ones that are struggling and they just needed.
They're behind and they get more behind.
Yes, exactly, and they need some other kind of.
That's exactly
process.
right.
They need a different process.
That's exactly right. I mean, we see this and go, wow, I wish but it's right there like that. This is more of that same Lexia. They also measured is Lexia in the start of the year versus Lexia current. So we could track kids over time, which is kind of that same thing Doug was pointing out. So this is all of them put together.
And they just did it the other way, finished.
Yep, they called it finished this time, right. They're not educators, they just use terms that made sense to them.
Yep.
And that's part of what the give and take for us is to help them understand, what does this stuff mean? I mean, they just talk about it in math terms.
Right.
And we want to put it in terms that lay people can understand. So we're not quite there yet with that either.
And interventions.
Exactly. And then this is the change in Lexia by grade. And then they measured Lexia's start by FAST and then their fall score by grade to again show what was the association between Lexia and their FAST score. Lexia isn't, it isn't the test, it's something you practice to get better at when you do the test. So that's what we're looking for. So, in the modeling, they predict most recent, NSS it's a national standard score from the Iowa Assessment Reading results based on fall score, previous Lexia, and current Lexia. This implicitly accounts for grade since previous Lexia status is related to grade and score, including both would not be good. So now we're getting to the, our once a year assessment that we're really trying to impact. And what's the impact of Lexia on that? From when they start into the current. Previous would have been, I think we picked 3 Lexia periods to track. There'd be something in the beginning of the year, the midpoint, and then I think I gave this to them in March, or April, so whatever that last Lexia point would have been. And again, this is where it loses me, but
It's all statistical, right?
it's the statistical, what's the Lexia change? And but we'll get to the findings here, which are the most important part for me.
Right.
Based on this, this is what is a really good takeaway for us. Bullet point 2, improved level in Lexia is related to improved level in NSS scores. There's a relationship there. And we didn't get them the spring scores, so when we add spring scores next fall, we'll have better data on this. This does not tell you anything about causation or the effectiveness of Lexia. However, it does tell you that improving in Lexia is associated with improving scores. So I think that speaks well for Lexia. It's an expensive supplement that we use. Is it up this fall?
No, we bought it, we did it 3
We have 2 more years. So, but that's part of how we wanted to evaluate, is it worth our money? Does it give us a bang for our buck? And we can say it does. It helps improve scores. The plan, though, is that, speaking to Lexia, when everybody participates, it's hard to consider it as an intervention with particular outcomes. So again, you don't want to not have Lexia if it works for people. But as Doug was indicating, but we have to do more. And I think we have more. We're just not collecting data on the more that goes on in the classroom level, the intervention. So as they point out, well, I'll go back to that. So consider causation. A lot of data we have is observational. What do they mean by causation data? Before and after intervention might be better to make associations. Interventions that only certain students get. Need a clear picture of inclusion or exclusion from an intervention. Then we'll have a better data set to say, did this cause, did this improve, what's the relationship? And again, I think we have that. We just have to ask teachers, figure out how to collect it efficiently so that we can use it to say what did they do. And we have some other programs. Title I is a program that not all students do. So that would be a group of students to monitor in this way, because they do get special interventions that other people don't get. So we could judge the impact of title. Some buildings have reading programs. They do reading programs in a certain way that others don't. We could monitor that. So they're asking us to think about implemented intervention for some schools and some classrooms, but not all, so that we can compare. We can compare those same types of students in different environments to see which things have most impact. Compare outcomes between those who received intervention and those that did not. That's just a different way of saying what I just said. So that's where we're headed as we figure out how to collect better data and use systems like this to do better analysis. We also realize that we need to have more common denominators between students. And so Susan can talk a bit about our language arts series. There are assessments that we've not universally used but plan to.
We have the assessments, we are using them. I think the difference that what we need to do, and we will be doing this year, is coming to agreement on what are going to be those interim assessments. So we are all in agreement we're going to give this particular assessment, because it is at a classroom level, in this particular time span, everybody. And then you can pull that, if you house that data in PowerSchool, then you can pull that data. Up until this point, teachers have been just working with the assessments and the materials, and so now I think we're at a place where they can be confident in their implementation of the materials. And so that's one piece that we have. Another piece that we're looking at too is there is a intervention that is associated with the materials that is, and the intent of this intervention is acceleration in the area of phonics and phonemic awareness. We have a handful of teachers that are going to be using that this year with specific student needs. Some of those are special educators, not all of them are. Some are Title I teachers. So we're going to look at what's the impact of that particular intervention on those students who are already skill deficit. And what we're most excited about in looking at this particular intervention is its ability to accelerate learning. And it is K-12. So if we find that we're starting at the elementary level, but if we find that it does in fact have the impact we expect it to, then the question is, do you want to scale that up to kids that might be extremely deficit at the secondary level? Because that's where, as we've talked about, these things compound themselves. You know, if we can catch them earlier, all the better, because the gap just widens as they get older. So that's something that we're working on this year as well, and we'll be excited to see what we learn from that.
Well, what your hypothesis is right now is how all students respond to FAST. So I would maybe set low-end criteria. If they don't respond well, they're kicked out. They're in their own category. They aren't going to be doing FAST anymore. You're going to find something else they respond to. Because, you know, one below, they did great, 58 to 26. That's fabulous. You're
right.
succeeding. The system is succeeding there.
Right.
And it's proven itself, but it's the one that's going bad. I mean, I would take that whole cohort out of this and say, let's
Find a more appropriate
yes.
intervention.
And
Exactly.
it could be varied. I mean, you aren't going to.
That's right.
You know, so, but I would take them statistically. I'd find a cutoff point to take them statistically out of the model because obviously they don't fit. And why put them through this if it's not working? Just a
Yep.
suggestion.
No, we see that.
Yeah, I made a note that, because I used to do this, RSVP reading buddies. So how can we isolate them or not isolate?
That's another one we'd like to monitor, because not everybody does it.
No.
Right.
But right now, we don't have that data in our system
Right.
to use.
Right.
So that's another group. So those are the kinds of things we've learned we're going to figure out how to include those.
Is there, because it's reading, and you're probably not in statistics, that would probably make it too confusing, because there was a few, those did nothing for me. Those ones right there.
Right.
I was like, whoa. But, so what happens if you have a person who has a very good at math, very good at, but they're dyslexic?
Right.
But if they audibly hear something and somebody reads to them, they can comprehend, but when they're reading it themselves, they're slower and they might show up 2 grades behind because of, do we know how many females of that maybe have a reading disability, or male, in those numbers? How many of them are considered a disability? Those are 1 and 2 behind, that
Correct.
show 1 or 2 grades behind? And maybe that's the different interventions that he's talking
Right.
about because of those diagnoses.
Yeah, that'd all be good to know. So that's where we're headed, so you can kind of understand the scope. This is just elementary. This same work can be done at Lincoln and John Adams and the high school. So just at their different levels. So that's our goal this year, is to scale it up for all buildings. But well, this kind of meets with the next item on the agenda, district goals. But particularly at the elementary, to really continue to focus on reading. That's our district goal, is to continue to improve reading, and whatever that means is kind of up to each building to decide. But bring the focus to reading and literacy, and particularly early childhood reading and literacy, to get those kids who are starting to show behind not as behind. Because once they get behind, then it's a real difficult process for everybody to keep them caught up.
So what do we pay for the Lexia program? Do you know?
I think it was $50,000 for 3 years.
Yeah, I'd have to look to be specific
was a
about it. but
substantial
that's-
amount.
It was substantial.
But it's for several thousand kids. So
Each student has a license.
Is there any way you could get a similar demographic school district to do this? And then you could compare.
we'd really like to. So never say never,
Yeah,
but I think we could. I think if we can come up with a presentation on how this has worked for us, because their people are not doing this, that I think we could approach somebody and say, hey, would you be willing to do this for the both of us? I think they'd be interested,
yeah, that'd be fun.
because everybody has these same questions and nobody has the answers. This is groundbreaking territory. So.
Another data point we are looking at too, when we mentioned the preschool level, is we now have put an emphasis on literacy instruction at the preschool level, not only within our district, but with our partners. So students are all being exposed to the creative curriculum, which has a heavy literacy component. And then also we are putting in place we began last year, the preschool version, if you will, of the FAST assessment, but it is designed for the preschool level, so we can see the impact of that on our preschoolers, and that is good data for our kindergarten teachers, so they know who coming in might have a deficit, as opposed to waiting till mid-year to have that data.
Very much a side note, but because it's computer-based, only because I was watching some educational YouTube videos, they say that kindergartners come in and they don't know how to operate a mouse because they're used to touch screens. So when you guys do your testing, are we doing on the touch screens with Lexia, or is it a mouse?
Well, the kindergarten, Lexia, it would be a touch screen because they have tablets. Yes. They don't have.
Lexia would be a touchscreen. What about the FAST assessment?
The FAST assessment at the lower grade levels is not on a computer. I mean, it's with a teacher.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
I knew kindergarten was, you had said that. First and second grade are not.
So that really, again, leads us to discussion about what's district goals would perhaps the board want to set for 2019-20. we didn't have any specific goals last year. I think we knew there was some focus areas. So it's not a thing that's going to make or break, how we go about doing our business. Our buildings are all working in particular strategic areas that's based on what they've identified as their needs and so forth. But why I think it's a good discussion is that when there is a district goal, it does bring some accountability to everybody, and it brings a focus to just again what you would like to hear from buildings and a report to the board. We can, because there's so many things they could talk about, but let's talk about literacy, for example, if that's a real focus of the board. So in all of the buildings, there's basically 3 goal areas, and some of them have bigger emphasis than others on them, but they all have some sort of reading literacy goal. And that's largely because it's in our assessment, that's an area of improvement for us. Another one is math. Math, partly because there's new math materials, so that's brought an emphasis to math this year, but also because people do math and they're just feeling like they're falling behind in math performance because they're spending all their time and energy on reading. And the question is, of course, well, they don't get more time, so how can you really do both? But they have made it an emphasis to focus on math because they've wanted to, and we support that. And then the third one is behavior. Just continuing to understand the relationship between behavior and learning, and the common sense approach that the more those kids are focused on learning instead of goofing around, the better they're going to do. So everybody's got something in the behavior area. So we're not here to decide tonight, but if you give us some direction for the next meeting, we could bring some specific language that would say district goals, and it would be able to include what everybody's doing at all of the different levels, because they're not all doing it exactly the same.
Didn't we throughout the year, last year, the principals came on each school and it was behavior, wasn't it? Kind of what they were doing.
We asked them to focus on their building plan, and again, last year they all had basically reading, behavior, and a technology goal.
Yeah.
And so you would hear some combination of how things were going in those 3 areas for them. Yep.
So are we going to compare from last year to this year when we do those presentations? Like, this is where we were last year for 8th grade. Our implementation has worked because it's a different class, so
right.
You have that huge variable. You have a
that's really in the building, in that case, in that building's plan. What are they trying to impact? What's their goal? How are they measuring it? And come and share the results with the board. That's what we're planning on doing. If you go to the COW meeting agendas,
right,
we have it on every month again, because we plan on having every building come back just like last year and report on how their building is performing.
That's right. But that's my question. If we change our goals, which district goals, then whatever they did last year, we're not going to see the growth. If they're the same goals, are they going to report last year's stuff by
I think that
what I'm trying to say?
That's why we're trying to tie in what they're doing with the district goals. I don't think you're going to decide district goals that are that foreign to what they're doing.
Okay.
That's going to be a problem, and they can do both. We feel their plans are well along, but they're not final yet. So.
In my mind, I was just thinking behavior. So if they had, 9, and I'm just making up numbers, so I can't remember them, that had to be set outside the classroom before they could return within the first half of the year, that we compare first half of the year with whatever they learned, and did it go up or down in this year? I know it's a different classroom, but.
Right, or again, that would be similar. I think you remember one of the principals talked about, office referrals. And she could track those same kids this year and in a different grade and tell you, did the programs and the planning and the intervention that they did it reduce the number of office referrals for that same group of kids from 2nd to 3rd grade? That would be something that they could probably talk about.
I guess that's what I'm interested in, because what we're implementing, what they're implementing, if you don't know the outcome,
That's right.
You just keep doing it.
We're
and if
really
it's not
trying to get them to
helping,
become more outcome-based like that.
Right, yeah.
So, again, this isn't going to make or break how we do our business this year to have district goals. It's
like
just
to
something,
align
if you want to bring a focus, that it helps people like Susan and I talk to people about, no, the board wants an emphasis on this. This is, and again, the district goal isn't the board's work, it's all of our work. And you do your part and they do their part.
I would like to, I don't know what you guys, I would like to, but I would like to align it with what they're doing in their buildings, so we're not working in two different directions.
Well, and even if they, I mean, if they have, let's say, a reading goal, what they might be doing to attend to that goal could look different in one building to another, even if they're all working on improving the achievement in reading. So in one building, they might do a focus on conferencing with students because that's an area that they feel they need to beef up. And where another building, it might be something to do with small group instruction and how that's playing out. So it could vary building to building, but they're all working towards reading. So.
And is that, okay.
So how about, and the rest of you can sure chime in, but what I'm hearing Jody kind of ask about is perhaps Susan and I could do some more analysis of our building plans and bring you some of those common denominators. That may help to say, oh, that would be the way to put that to you. And
Yeah.
we can bring you some options for how we
That's
might
right.
say that and do that. Because the district goal part might be how do we use the data or how do we use the information? Not that you're doing something, but that there's a process that we think as a district is going to bring better results if you do it this way.
Yeah, that's what and I want to
It's
see.
like
if-
tracking kids over time
Yeah.
and yeah.
Because our ultimate
alignment.
goal, and which I think every educator's ultimate goal is that they want every child that passes through their room to succeed.
Mhm.
Improvement.
Right.
And and that's a good example. That wouldn't be a good district goal. That's more of our mission statement or
Yeah.
our vision for what we want kids to be. So let's morph that into, so then what does that mean for board goals? As we think about your work for 2019-20, I've kind of given you in this committee of the whole schedule an idea of what I've heard you say and some of the things that we've been working on this past year and have started to kind of just folds those goals into the work you're going to do. It's kind of reverse engineering it backwards.
And I think what I like about this paperwork, which, number one, it's not set in stone, we add, take away as the stuff comes up, but we did get this last year, at the very beginning, and it helps me anyway go back under the headings, because sometimes if you talk about it in August or September, and then it comes time to vote in June or July, and we've talked about it 3 or 4 times, but haven't touched it again in a few months because of the date is coming and the work that they had to do behind the scenes after we made a vote and direct them, we forget and then it seems new because we're not living it every day. If you keep this and update it as it goes, you have, oh, we did talk about that at the COW meeting in August, in September, in October, November. That was our final assessment. They've been working to get it there. Now it's ready, to implement. Because we just don't live it every day. And I work and other paperwork you forget. So it was a good thing for me to go back and go, yep, we hit that 3 times, and we discussed it. And then I could go find my notes on it.
So let me use September as an example. 2, 3, 4, and 5 are highlighted yellow. Those things will all take a decision sometime during the year. So the goal, one of the board goals is going to be to decide if you need to make changes to your early retirement program. Are you going to offer it again? So we put that early on the agenda because it may take a couple of meetings to come to understand what the parameters of that might be and where do you go with that. So again, we could put it on the list and say, board goal is to review early retirement. But it's here in the work. That's all I'm saying. It's here in the work. You don't have to make it we're going to just we're going to, like a board goal might be, we're going to improve our transparency. Well, how are you going to do that? This is really about getting some specific things done. We need to bring this health insurance, to you several times as we review health insurance. So health insurance is on the September meeting, the November meeting. In particular, though, there's 2 sessions that we're going to devote some time to health insurance. But particularly in the September one, we have an issue with the number of people who are 65 and older on our health insurance plan. Mm-hmm. And we allow that to happen. And
they're retired.
And they're retired. And they're not taking Medicaid.
We're not age
Right. discriminating that they work for us
Right.
at 65 and we want them
And
on
we
for
allow people
insurance.
through early retirement to continue our insurance, and they're 80 years old. Do we want to continue that, not continue that? That's, again, a goal that we think the board should have to make some decisions about early retirement.
Do they pay for
And
their
health
own,
insurance.
I mean, we don't have to get into it, we're just going over it. My
Right.
question is, do they pay for their own premiums, or is the school paying
They
for
do.
the premiums? They
They
pay for
pay
their
100%
premiums,
of their
100%?
Just like early retirement, and
Right.
it's a COBRA, and they just decide to stay on our plan.
Okay,
But it costs them and us a lot of money,
right.
because so we don't know if it's education or,
Tim Johnston's an actuarial scientist, I'd hand that one over to him.
this is where this comes from.
Okay,
Tim and I, we've been working on this all summer.
okay,
So,
well,
we're getting close to, well, at least we can define the issue to you. Again, that's the
Right.
work of the board, to see what do you want to do before we actually decide. The SAVE is the 1 cent penny sales tax, which got re-voted or reapproved for another 50 years. And we need to educate the board on how do we renew our SAVE, what's different going forward with the new version versus the old version. And then make a plan to decide when you want to renew your SAVE. It expires in 2031, so you've, on one hand, got time, but on the other hand, if you would want to use SAVE to fund facility debt, you need to have a new vote on SAVE now. So we need to iron that one out. And then, again, every month until at least December, I have on here, the facility, we'll have a gym and a pool update for you after every month. There's at least monthly meetings. And I know some of you are going to participate in that, but we're going to still bring it back to the group, make sure everybody's heard everything that's happening in the committees, get reports, see where they're at, what issues they're dealing with, because that's the decision that, again, the board's trying to make in December. January, what are you going to do with the pool? What are you going to do with the gym?
And the first meeting is August 8th,
13th.
13th. Why do I want it earlier? I don't know.
Right.
I said that to you 3 times.
Yep, 13th at the high school library, 6:30. It is a work session, so it is fine if everybody comes. It is going to be advertised as a work session,
What's the time?
6:30. And the high school library is when you walk in the front doors of the high school, take a right down that first hall, and then it's a big room on your right, you can't miss it. So, so that's kind of where the yellow things are highlighted here. I could jump down to January. I think two that we've talked about. I guess I'm suggesting that in January number 3, the CEP program
Yes.
we make a decision on that this year.
And I think that.
So that would be a goal.
A lot of research, and we've talked about it
Yeah.
and research, but I know that you have presented 2 different ways, that things
Yep,
could be
there's
done.
options.
We'll read.
Mhm.
I just think it's just really, really important when we talk, especially looking at those, it's part of the statistics of children that are underprivileged, for lack of a better term, based on financial situation. And because social media is so right there for things, for people who maybe don't have those things that can talk, you just hit enter and it's all out there. We take care of our kids that they don't feel less than when they walk through a line and everybody knows they're getting free lunch because you don't have the financial means to make this when another student's family does. Neither student has any money, really. They're minors, but, they look at it that way. And I would hope by January that we've each maybe done our own. It's right there, community eligibility provision. There's things you can look up, Google, whatever, and come very educated on that, because we'll be making a decision for a long term on how we address the care of our kids.
I put it in January. We've worked on this for 2 years.
We have.
Sarah and I have a lot of background and information about how it worked in the financial model. I just put in January sort of based on workflow. There are so many other things going on in the fall. And the decision to join the program isn't until the spring of the year, so that's kind of why it ended up in January. If things would fall differently and we could move it up, we'd probably move it up. But for now, we could do it in January and
But we all have
make a
time then
decision.
to refresh ourselves and go look by that.
The other one on that list, 2 others on that list, staffing plan it's not highlighted because it's going to be a process that's going to take us a while to come up with a staffing plan. But we definitely need to get in front of several aspects of staffing, including understanding our enrollment projections, having some discussions about class size, having some comparability for what districts our size have for staff, what do buildings in our district have for staff, and why did some have this and some have that. There's a lot to understand about that, but I think ultimately it's going to result in a plan for making decisions about, with declining enrollment, how do we make cuts? How do we keep up the staff with our clientele? It's also related to a facilities one. If you go to December number 5, an area that you hear us talk a lot about, but an area of special programs is bursting at the seams. The Pinecrest program, the alternative high school, the partnership school. There is no, even with declining enrollment, there is no lack of students in those programs. And we need to be able to talk about facilities for those places too, and tell you where we're at and why we think what we do and what that kind of point might be in which we really need to think about doing something based on enrollment in those programs. I'll give you an example. If we would double the size of Pinecrest, we'd have twice as many kids out there. But we only have that number of kids because that's the only space we have. So, right, wrong, I'm just saying we need to understand that and decide if that's an area that we want to improve in by doing something different with a facility. And then also in January, I heard it several times this fall, so again, this is my words, not yours, but an employee pay matrix for the other employees who aren't in that administrative group. We've got miscellaneous employees and we've got some district office people. I think those are the two groups. And it makes sense to have a model that's based on a similar formula that we developed for administrators. And get everybody in that same kind of, in the same modeling of how do we decide what people get and what their salary should be going forward. There may be a couple of other groups that I missed, but the idea is that we would bring a matrix for all the groups that we don't currently have or don't have a contract. And because if you're on a contract, you don't need a matrix. I mean, you negotiate your salary. But we have other groups that don't have anything. We've just picked numbers out of the sky, so to speak, for where do people start, and we go from there. So that would be something I've heard you express some interest in.
I think it shows the board the fair market value, the research, so we know why we're approving salaries. It shows the public why those salaries are there, because it's based on the fair market value. And I don't know, I think it's a good idea.
Yep, so I didn't do too much in May and June because I know how last year's worked. Everything kind of keeps moving forward. And we have new board members in November, perhaps. And, we need to give them some voice in what some of these work sessions start to look at too. So it's a little more flexible after November than it is for this group of people in September, October, and November.
Well, we just want to give you more work. Let's ask.
And then that aligns with, board meetings that then after these things come to board meetings for approval. I mean, it's been well vetted, you've been transparent about making decisions, and I think it makes the business meeting go a little bit better when we're not trying to discuss the item for this first time or trying to make a decision at the board table when we just haven't had enough time to talk about it.
So here's my question to you, Dave. So when, which we don't know until November, but when we have people that are newly elected in, will they get copies of the stuff? We have conversations with them so they can use the
So my plan is as soon as I know people are taking out petitions, then I'm going to meet with them and start to share with them where the board's at in its work. And they need to hit the ground running in November. I wouldn't want a newly elected board member to come into the November, or let's say December meeting, the second meeting they come to and we vote on, and the vote is to build a building. Whoa!
Like we did to you guys, just saying.
I mean, it could be.
I met with Dave.
Yeah.
It could be.
Before I was elected.
Yeah, I think everybody's always been willing to do that. I think I'm just going to raise the expectations a bit because I think some of this work is a little bit more urgent than we've had in the past, or just feeling comfortable enough to be able to keep up with it. Make sure they feel invited to meetings, that they know how to access ISAB materials and other resources that we have. So
The
that,
YouTube videos.
yeah, so that they can come and really just
Yep.
feel new but not be new to the conversation. So we're going to try to do a little bit more onboarding, even though they're not going to be board members. I think if they're interested in the school board, it'd be just good information for them to have. We're only going to share what's public. We would share with the public anyway. So there's nothing we can hide from them. So I think it'll be just really informative.
I do too. I think that's a good plan.
So
when will it be September that they have to file their papers, or?
You
yes.
had it at the last meeting.
I put it in my notes a couple of times. I think it's August. They can get papers in September. They're due. Yes.
Okay.
But I don't exactly remember the dates.
That's okay.
Yeah.
And they have to get them from here, not the courthouse.
Right,
They have to turn them in here.
right.
You can get your petition online at the courthouse or here,
They have to
the
try
due
to-
date and time, that 5 PM deadline is only here.
Right.
We clarified that, the law on that.
And I was,
So any other feedback on the cow agendas?
no, I like this plan.
I think, well, the legislative updates, you tend to keep us in the loop and things are brought up as they are at each meeting after the session starts, but I see that that's.
We could always spend more time on that if people, would want to. I'm just.
Depending on what's coming through in funnel weeks
Exactly.
and stuff like
Yeah.
that, yeah.
Just,
Amy
if we need
St.
to be-
Clair is the chair of the Education Committee in the Senate. Just email her.
okay. And then the last two items we have are sort of joint. Alan had brought these up earlier. It's all in, Alan and I visited about them, but just wanted to put them out there again for clarification and just transparency. The computer science education grant, the amount was
3,000, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Was it 25,000?
No, it was
No,
like
yeah.
3,700.
and describe again how we applied for specifically that amount.
Correct.
To do what with it?
We applied for that amount. The grant is to be used to provide professional learning for teachers. That's the intent, and the purpose is that you begin as a district or consider how you might incorporate computer science education in your district. We had a teacher at the secondary level that was interested in pursuing their additional coursework for the endorsement. Those funds will be used to support that teacher in their coursework so that we can then begin to offer courses in computer science education, beginning with a year-long course of principles of computer science education that aligns to what is offered as one of the pathways at NIAC.
And that's why the difference, because Clear Lake had
Correct.
that.
They
dollar
applied for a
amount, and
different
we-
purpose.
Right, and we,
Right.
okay,
Right.
that explains it.
We got what we asked for.
You're welcome.
The only reason I brought it up is, as a sub, when you go into a classroom and the teacher leaves you a lesson plan that says self-directed learning on Chromebook, whatever, and you go to the Chromebook and when they see you coming, they change the tab. You don't, but if you don't know anything about tabs,
Uh-huh.
you wouldn't know what they do. You just, oh, okay, and then they change it back when you walk away. I mean, you have to be this way and that way. The point is, I've been with other teachers, other sub-teachers, and other paras, and they have no idea. They have no idea. And they don't realize that it's just a small amount of people. Let's say 5 people in the class, but it's a lot of people to me.
Right.
So, yeah.
So we are going to do a better job of assessing what our substitutes and our paras need for training, as Alan has appropriately pointed out to us. And we have multiple ways in which to give that training to people. Paras, for example, we have professional learning for paras that we can focus on computer needs and so forth. The substitute thing's a little bit more individualized, but we think that if we can identify their needs just during their time in a building, if they would be like at a secondary level and have a prep period that they're not really prepping for, but we could bring in a computer person or anybody who has the skill that they're wanting to know about and we can train them up. So that part might be a little more individualized, but we're gonna, based on Alan's experience, we're gonna take more time to pay attention to that and meet their needs.
Thank you.
I would have been one of the kids that changed the tab.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And all I do is say, hey, you have 5 tabs, get rid of them.
That's right. So we've talked about it again. Just a reminder, August 13th is the first pool and gym meeting, high school library study hall, high school study hall, 6:30, and on the 13th. And you can participate. I mean, there'll be a group session, then there'll be some breakout, one gym, one. You can put yourselves wherever you'd like. I know we have some specific assignments, but the rest of you can do whatever you'd like.
Fast water.
We got
I
it.
want fast water.
We're studying up
What's that?
in the pool. There's fast water and slow water in swimming
Yeah.
pools.
Ah, this are.
There is.
Can you turn it on and off?
Hey, listen, when the competition comes in slow, we're there.
Got
That's
it.
exactly right. So that's all I had.
That's a lot. Thank you very much.
Very
Thank you.
informative. Yeah.